Hi, my name is Finn Garner. I'm a sophomore here at Bloomsburg, studying digital forensics and cybersecurity, but I also have a strong personal interest in political history and American foreign policy. Today, I'm presenting on the policy decisions that have shaped the evolution of U.S.-Iran relations. I chose this topic because I want to explain how we've arrived at the violent conflict seen today. So I want to start off in the early 1950s. For decades, the US and Britain had helped Iran develop its oil resources, and production was now mainly controlled by the Anglo-Persian Oil Company. The Iranians had been becoming increasingly unhappy that the British had been taking more than 80% of the profits, even though the oil came from Iran's land. In 1951, Iranian Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh, who had been appointed by the Shah, decided to nationalize the oil industry, seizing Western assets with strong public support. He continued to undermine the Shah by centralizing power, dissolving the parliament, and becoming friendly with the Soviet Union. This concerned Western leaders because it looked like the Soviets were close to gaining access to some of the largest oil reserves on Earth in the midst of the Cold War. So in the spring of 1953, the CIA and MI6 launched Operation Ajax to support the Shah in removing Mossadegh from power. They used propaganda, bribery, and political manipulation to encourage protests and resistance, weakening Mossadegh's power. By August, a coup backed by the Iranian military returned Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi to power, while Mossadegh was subjected to a lifetime of house arrest. As many as 300 people were killed during these events, and it was clear to many Iranians that this had been engineered by the West to reinstall their puppet leader. This sowed the early seeds of anti-American sentiment. For the next 25 years, the Shah was one of America's strongest allies. He supported their actions in the Cold War and maintained friendly relations with Israel, despite the fact that almost no other countries recognized the state. He modernized Iran, expanded women's rights, secularized education, and built up the economy. Although these ideas seem normal to us, rapid modernization with Western values was met with disapproval from Islamic traditionalists and leftist groups in Iran. The Shah was an authoritarian leader, and he did not take criticism lightly. His large network of secret police arrested thousands of political opponents. He outlawed the Iranian Communist Party, tortured prisoners, and allowed widespread corruption in his administration. These decisions created the political unrest that would eventually lead to a revolution. So in 1979, demonstrations got out of control, causing the government to collapse, and the Shah fled to the US. The revolution welcomed the return of Ayatollah Khamenei, a radical Muslim cleric who had been exiled in Paris. He established a theocracy and made his feelings towards the US clear, burning their flags and labeling them the Great Satan. Months later, Iranian students stormed the American embassy in Tehran and took 52 hostages with encouragement from the Ayatollah. It was called the Iran hostage crisis, and diplomatic relations have been cut off ever since. President Jimmy Carter first tried to negotiate and then attempted a rescue mission, but it failed after a helicopter crash and further embarrassed the US, and the hostages were only released 444 days later. So from the 1980s and onwards, both countries took actions that raised tensions and cemented them as bitter enemies. The Reagan administration notably supported Saddam Hussein and Iraq in their war against Iran, providing intelligence, loans, and military equipment. In 1983, attacks from an Iranian-backed terrorist group in Beirut, Lebanon, killed 63 people at the U.S. Embassy and 241 American servicemen at a Marine barracks. The next year in Beirut, CIA Chief William Buckley was kidnapped and killed, again by Iranian-backed terrorists. Multiple plane hijackings from Iranian proxy terrorists caused more American deaths. Then, after repeated Iranian attacks on American and Kuwaiti oil tankers, the U.S. sank most of Iran's navy in Operation Praying Mantis. Months later, an American cruiser mistakenly shot down a commercial jet, killing 254 Iranian civilians. Later in the 90s, attacks in Kenya and Saudi Arabia harmed more Americans as Iran's network continued to grow. After 9/11, Iran also sent money and weapons to Iraqi militias to aid their fight against the American occupation. During this period, Iran accelerated their efforts to build a nuclear weapon, and they were met with strong economic sanctions from the US. In 2015, the Obama administration championed the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, also known as the Iran nuclear deal. It promised that the US would lift its sanctions and Iran would give up their pursuit of a nuclear weapon. However, this deal was only a temporary solution because it was set to expire in 10 years, so it only delayed Iran's effort to get a weapon. One of the deal's most vocal critics was Donald Trump, and when he was elected to his first term, he withdrew the U.S. from the agreement and crippled Iran's economy with sanctions. In 2020, Trump also ordered an airstrike that killed Iranian General Qasem Soleimani, a figurehead of their terror network. In response, Iran fired missiles at U.S. military bases in the region. In Trump's second term, he again applied heavy pressure on the regime. He supported Israel in their 12-day war with Iran and destroyed their nuclear facilities in Operation Midnight Hammer. This was followed by months of stagnant negotiations, and Trump began to seriously threaten Iran again when they killed thousands of their own protesters. A last-ditch effort at diplomacy failed, and this was the final nail in the coffin. Fed up with their lack of nuclear cooperation, ballistic missile program, and state-sponsored terrorism, the threat became real when he launched Operation Epic Fury with Israel on February 28th of this year. Since then, we've seen the death of Iran's supreme leader and most of his regime, along with the destruction of their military infrastructure. After another round of failed talks, Trump ordered a naval blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. And this is the current state of U.S.-Iran relations today. We're embroiled in a bloody conflict with no end in sight after decades of violent incidents that have escalated tensions and created a relationship of distrust. I hope this makes it clear that this crisis did not happen suddenly. It's a result of a long history of policy decisions, and with such an unpredictable man in office, no one knows what's next. Thank you.